Audio Jungle.
It is that time once again, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Wrestling with My Thoughts. Here we're going to discuss the latest week in pro wrestling action. We're going to talk the WWE Hall of Fame just a little bit, and it's WrestleMania season. And what is there not to be excited about when it comes to WrestleMania season? WWE's made a lot of matches for WrestleMania. TakeOver is looking like it's going to be a really good show. So we have a lot to discuss today. I am just going to give just a minute for our lobby to fill up a little bit before we get started. We're going to start today by going over the rundown of this week's action. We're going to start with Impact. We're going to talk the Wednesday Night Wars. We're going to get into Raw and SmackDown. And later in the show, if you are interested, later in the show, we are going to be attempting for the first time ever on Wrestling with My Thoughts, we are going to be attempting a live Q&A session where you will be able to actually join the chat. My producer, Joey, will screen your question, and if we believe it's a question that we'd like to take the time to answer on the show, we'll bring you on to the show for a few seconds so you can state your question, and then I'll be answering it. So that's what we're going to do. We already have the comments flowing. Leave your comments, even if you don't want to be on stream. If you just want to leave your comments in the chat and your questions in the chat, we'll put your question on screen and we'll answer it that way as well. I'll go ahead and start by saying, as you can see at the bottom, at Infamous Opionist, go ahead and give me a follow on TikTok. I just recently posted a video on TikTok with all of my social media handles. So you can go and see that video to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc. If you haven't subscribed to the Raw Sports YouTube channel, go ahead and do that now if you're watching on YouTube. We have a Facebook user, the Triple Threat Main Event at WrestleMania and Kali in the Hall of Fame. I'm going to be talking about that here in just a little bit, so you'll get my opinion on that as well. So again, go ahead and put your questions in chat. Our producer, Joey, should be posting the link so that if you want to try and join the stream, we can. Who knows how that's going to work? It's our first time trying it, but hopefully that works out just fine as well. So let's go ahead and get started, and let's just talk about Impact. Now, here's the thing about my weekly rundown. I am not here to necessarily run down every match and every promo that happened on every show. If I did that, it would take much longer than the hour approximately that I'm attempting to hold myself to for the show. So I'm going to be talking about the things that I feel like I have some meat in discussing. If you would like to view, the full shows for all these companies, every one of them has a YouTube channel. So even if you can't find a way to stream it, you can go to the Impact YouTube channel, the WWE and AEW YouTube channels, and you can view the clips and the matches and the promos and all of that stuff. I would have to show for yourself if you want the full experience. So make sure that you check those out. So let's go ahead and talk about this week's Impact Wrestling. Impact Wrestling has a big problem in how it's booked. And by the way, we did just share the StreamYard link in chat. So if you'd like to click that and try and be on live here in a little bit, you can do that now. Impact has a big problem with how they're booked, and I'm going to be getting to that in a minute. As I run down some of the highlights, I think you're going to see the trend. We had Deonna Purrazzo defeating Jazz with outside help from Susan. Susan clocked Jazz with a shoe. Deonna Purrazzo was able to get the win. They're obviously trying to build to a rematch, possibly at Impact's Rebellion pay-per-view between Deonna and Jazz. And obviously, if they're allowed to just have the match and have a clean finish, it's probably going to be really good. But Impact has given me no reason to believe that they're going to let that match go to a clean finish. Then we had TJP versus the new X Division champion, Ace Austin. TJP won by disqualification because guess what? We had outside interference. Madman Fulton ran in when TJP hit his finisher, and Madman Fulton broke up the pin, caused the disqualification. We also had Trey Miguel defeating AC Romero. Now, this one actually ended clean, but there was a post-match beatdown and interference when Larry D jumped in with AC Romero and started beating down the former rascal Trey Miguel. Sammy Callahan busted in and saved Trey Miguel, which was really weird. I'm not sure where they're going with that story. I guess we'll see. That's the point of pro wrestling, right? But more outside interference, even if it was post-match. And then in the main event, Carl Anderson defeated Eddie Edwards. Main event was a little bit underwhelming, to be completely honest. I know that Eddie and Carl are both great performers. I know that they are both great wrestlers. There was just something about this match. I don't know if it was their chemistry. I don't know if it was the way it was booked. I don't know what it was. But the match didn't really do anything for me. Carl Anderson ended up getting the win. And then afterwards, the new Impact champions, Finn Juice, came on screen and basically ran down the Good Brothers and told them if they wanted a rematch, they could have it as soon as they get back from Japan. So it looks like we're heading towards a rebellion match between Finn Juice and the Good Brothers in a rematch for the Tag Team Championships. So the problem, as you might have noticed, outside interference, outside beatdown. That happens every single week with Impact. Every fucking week. And it's getting to the point where I can't even enjoy the show anymore. I used to make an effort to go and try and find websites where I could watch like the full uninterrupted stream of Impact. I don't do that anymore because it feels like a waste of my time. It's like waiting in line to get on a big roller coaster at Disney World, Space Mountain, and you wait for 2 hours, and every 15 minutes someone comes along and just kicks you in the nuts. I mean, sure, maybe the wait will be worth it by the time you get to the end. Maybe the show will end up being okay. But every 15 minutes someone comes along, kicks you in the nuts, it's going to ruin the experience. And that's what Impact feels like. Every 15 minutes, somebody runs up and just absolutely kicks me right in the coin purse with these outside interferences. And I hate it. I hate it. Every 15 minutes on Impact, you see me going, oh, you've got to be kidding me with this again, because it happens multiple times throughout the show. WWE is poisoned by booking themselves into corners. AEW is poisoned by a lot of their matches being similar because it's just spot fest after spot fest. Impact is poisoned because they don't know how to continuously book a story without continued outside interference. And it's starting to get really old. I can put up with AEW's repetitive matches because a lot of times, even if they're repetitive, they're still great matches. I can put up with WWE's inconsistent booking because the production value is so high. I can't put up with Impact. I cannot. And listen, I think Impact's roster is better than it's been in years. I think when it's booked properly, Impact now could be better than TNA was in its heyday, because TNA was so focused on the big WCW guys and constantly shit talking WWF on air and recycling WWF storylines for their own purposes, and Dixie always wanted to be on TV. I think Impact, if it's booked properly, could be much better than TNA was in its heyday. But this ain't the way. This ain't it. And I am personally losing my patience with Impact. And who am I, right? Impact doesn't give a shit if I'm losing my patience with them, and I understand that. I'm just one man. But I come on here to state my opinion, and my opinion, Impact is getting old, and I'm losing interest very quickly, and they need to fix that. The other problem that they have is the Forbidden Door being opened. Now, the Forbidden Door being opened is great overall. AEW and Impact and New Japan and Ring of Honor and all these companies, crossing their lanes and sharing talent. It opens up the door, pun not intended, for some great matches and some great stories that otherwise you may not have thought were possible, right? But the problem is that Impact, and you'll excuse me if I multitask for a moment. I'm going to go share the link for the podcast on my own personal page. The problem with the open door with Impact is that they are getting the butt end of the deal. And a perfect representation of that was on Impact this week, as AEW champion Kenny Omega and Don Callis came out, spent 12 minutes on the show, 12 minutes, running down Impact, running down their champion, Rich Swann, telling Rich Swann that he was not and will never be on Kenny Omega's level, guaranteeing victory, shitting all over the show. This not including every week that AEW runs a 5-minute ad hyping up their card, and Tony Khan comes on and shit talks Impact. Every week this happens. So we had that plus Kenny Omega and Don Callis going 12 minutes, bashing the head of Impact repeatedly. Now, a lot of people were saying, I was on a podcast with Heel Josh on TikTok this past week, and he said that he thought maybe Impact was paying their dues a little bit from and atoning for their sins from past mistakes, misusing New Japan's talent, and they were reestablishing trust, and they were rebuilding a bridge with AEW. And that's all fine and dandy. I guess we'll wait and see what happens if that is indeed the case. But eventually, Impact's going to need to get something out of this. And if they don't, I don't know what the hell they're doing over there. So that's it for Impact. Let's move on to the Wednesday Night War. And let's start with WWE NXT. NXT was okay this week. There are some matches at TakeOver Stand and Deliver that I'm genuinely excited for, like Cole and O'Reilly. Obviously, they're building for Finn Balor to defend against Karrion Kross. Io Shirai versus Raquel Gonzalez. I'm not the biggest Io Shirai fan, and I'm hoping that Raquel is the one that finally takes the championship off of her. So a lot of things for me personally to get excited about. Walter, obviously, building up with a match with Tommaso Ciampa is going to be really good as well. But this particular episode of NXT just ran a little bit dry for me. We had Zoe Stark teaming up with Io Shirai versus Raquel and Dakota. This match was really just made to make Raquel look strong. Gonzalez eventually pinned Stark and won the match. After the match, Kai distracted Shirai, allowing Raquel Gonzalez to plant the Genius of the Sky with a powerbomb on the announce table. This match was okay, but again, I'm not a big fan of Io Shirai. I am a big fan of Dakota Kai. I used to not be. This heel turn did wonders for me in my mind with Dakota Kai. I like her a lot more. NXT rather seems to be wanting to push Stark and Raquel Gonzalez as two of their women of the future. This could mean that we might be seeing Io and Dakota moving up to the main roster relatively soon, because it seems like they're doing a lot of work to establish and build a lot of these other female wrestlers in NXT and give them some clout as we prepare for that transition to happen. And Stark seems to be one of them they want to push, so we'll see what happens there. We have the Colossal Bronson Reed versus LA Knight. I'm also not a fan of Bronson Reed. I mean, I could see what WWE sees in him, but I just don't get excited. Like, LA Knight is brand new. When he comes out for a match, I'm like, okay, cool. Let's see what happens. You know, I'm ready to see this match. When Bronson Reed comes out, I'm just like, And again, that's just my opinion, which is infamous. I'm not a fan of Bronson Reed. Again, I see what WWE sees in him, and I can see what others see in him, but not me. It's not for me. Reed did beat Knight by pinfall as well. I don't get that decision at all. I feel like LA Knight definitely needed that victory. I don't understand the decision of putting Bronson Reed over. I really, really don't. I don't get it at all. William Regal did make an announcement, however, that next week, 12 men, including LA Knight and Bronson Reed, would compete in a battle royal where the final 6 would qualify for a gauntlet match to determine the number 1 contender to Johnny Gargano's North American Championship at TakeOver Stand and Deliver. So I'll preview that next week. We had really, really unfortunate news come out of this episode of NXT. It was announced on Twitter shortly before the show But unfortunately, last week in the tag team match between Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch against Karrion Kross and Finn Balor, Danny Burch suffered a legitimate shoulder injury. Because of this legitimate shoulder injury, Danny Burch, unfortunately, is not going to be able to compete and defend the NXT Tag Team Championships. And as such, Lorcan and Burch had to relinquish the tag titles. And that just really sucks. It really sucks. Because it took a very long time for Lorcan and Burch to finally climb that ladder, get to the top of the mountain, and win the championships. And to have the reign come to an end like this, really, really unfortunate, really sad, really frustrating, I'm sure, for Burch and Lorcan as well. So they had to relinquish the tag team championships, and we're going to have I believe they're calling it a tag team eliminator gauntlet or something coming up soon, which is going to involve MSK as one of the teams. The Grizzled Young Veterans are also going to be in that match, a few other teams. But as a result of last week's match, we had Oney Lorcan going one-on-one with Karrion Kross. Now, they actually let Lorcan get some offense in this match, which I was legitimately surprised by. I really, really thought this was going to be a squash match by Karrion Kross. Well, Kross did end up winning, but it was a very, very solid back-and-forth, hard-hitting match. And Lorcan came out looking very strong in it. But obviously, he wasn't going to lose to Kross as we build towards Kross versus Balor. But I think, personally, this was the best Karrion Kross match that we've seen. I'm going to be honest. I'm impressed by his physique. I love the act with him and Scarlett. I have not been a huge fan of his matches so far. This match with Lorcan sort of gave me a little bit of hope. And now I'm a little bit more excited about the match with Finn Balor at TakeOver Stand and Deliver than I was before. So, very excited for that. We had Walter versus Drake Maverick for some goddamn reason. Power bombed the living hell out of Drake Maverick right off the bat. Then put him in a single leg Boston Crab, and Maverick just passed out. And the referee stopped the match. You know, Drake Maverick was never going to beat Walter. And I understand that we need to make Walter look strong. I understand that we needed to reintroduce him to the North American audience, because the last we saw him was Survivor Series 2019 when it was NXT versus SmackDown versus Raw, and Walter was the first man eliminated in that tag team match, I might add. So if Walter was looking weak to North American audiences, it was nobody's fault except WWE's. Pissed me the hell off when Walter went out first in that Survivor Series match. So they wanted to make Walter look strong in front of North American audiences, just so North American audiences who weren't familiar with him would be able to see him and say, that's a big fucking dude. He is a wrecking machine. He hits really hard, and I should be worried about Tommaso Ciampa. And this match did that. I feel bad for Drake Maverick. You know, they seem to have all but dropped the tag team thing that he had going with Killian Dane. That was a pretty entertaining story, and I hope they bring it back. But we'll see. We'll see what happens there. NXT Tag Team Championships, Moon and Blackheart prevailed over Aaliyah and Mercedes Martinez to retain the championships. Again, average match, which is really nothing blew me away on this episode of NXT, unfortunately, like I said in the beginning. Average match, right decision. Aaliyah and Martinez aren't ready for those championships. Mercedes Martinez feels a little bit lost. Mercedes feels like she's lost in the ether a little bit at this point. I'm not sure what the deal with Mercedes Martinez is. Again, we're just going to have to wait and see. But Mercedes Martinez, you know, she went up to Retribution. She was there for like 2 weeks and then disappeared and then just suddenly reappeared on NXT, taking out Io Shirai. That never went anywhere. Now she's just a member of the Robert Stone brand. And I've said this on a TikTok, and I'll say it again. Who the fuck is Robert Stone, and why should I care? Because right now I don't. I mean, he's a little man in a suit that's constantly getting his ass kicked, and that's all I know about Robert Stone. So, I don't know. We'll see. We then had an interesting development with Jordan Devlin, who, if you guys will all remember, you might have to think back a little bit. You might have to think back a little bit to pre-pandemic. Pre-pandemic, the cruiserweight champion was Jordan Devlin. And then it was after the pandemic and we realized that Jordan Devlin wasn't going to be able to travel that they had the Cruiserweight Championship tournament, which was eventually won by Santos Escobar, then masked as something Del Fantasma. I can't remember what his full name was. And Santos Escobar won the Cruiserweight Championship and then started this long reign that he's had, beating every Cruiserweight on the fucking roster. And having some good matches throughout, I might add. Jordan Devlin has returned, and he is now carrying the Cruiserweight Championship as well. He went one-on-one with Kushida on this night. Jordan Devlin eventually did get the win. However, there was some interference by Legado del Fantasma, Joaquin Wilde, and Raul Mendoza. The distraction led to Jordan Devlin being able to pick up the win on Kushida. After the match, it was a big moment where Santos Escobar and Jordan Devlin were in the ring. Excuse me, I'm just making sure my microphone didn't come out. I just kicked the cord. Give me a second. Mike.
Logitech headset. Okay. There we go. So we had a moment where Santos Escobar and Jordan Devlin were face-to-face. They were each holding up the championship, both claiming to be the rightful champions, and both really, within storyline, realistically, having a good claim to being the rightful champion. And then Heartbreak, the Heartbreak Kids music hit. Shawn Michaels came out. Obviously, if there had been a crowd, there wouldn't have been a big pop. There was a big canned pop. The people that were there in attendance were very excited. HBK came out, and he just sort of stopped. He stared at him. He pulled a ladder out from under the ring. He shoved it in the ring. And it's kind of implied, strongly implied, if not yet confirmed, that at TakeOver Stand and Deliver, there's going to be a ladder match between Santos Escobar and Jordan Devlin to determine the rightful NXT Cruiserweight Champion. By the way, the match between Devlin and Kushida, easily match of the night. Easily, far and away, match of the night. More NXT caliber than anything else that happened on this night. And then finally, at the end of the show, we had a contract signing between Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly for an unsanctioned match at TakeOver Stand and Deliver. Obviously, there was an excellent exchange between Cole and O'Reilly. Cole blames O'Reilly for the breaking up of the Undisputed Era by trying to bring Finn Balor into the picture. O'Reilly blames Cole for being selfish, obviously. They signed their contracts. They got in each other's faces. I watched this on Hulu. I didn't see this happen when I was watching Hulu, but there's a YouTube clip up where Adam Cole decks William Regal. Hulu cut off before that. I'm assuming that there was a big blow up, a WWE.com exclusive after the contract signing was over. And I'm assuming that there was a big blow up with William Regal and Adam Cole at that point, and Adam Cole decked him. So obviously there's a little bit of a story going on there with Adam Cole's problem with authority, but it is going to be Cole versus O'Reilly at NXT TakeOver Stand and Deliver. That match is going to be excellent. I think the story it could be better, but it's long-term booking. And that's whenever WWE successfully accomplishes long-term booking on any other brands, you have to give them a pat on the back because they don't always do it successfully. But in this case, they've done it successfully. They've woven the strings and the threads going all the way back to Kyle O'Reilly's first shot at the NXT Championship and weaving all the way back to this point as well. Let's go ahead and talk about AEW Dynamite. Dynamite continues to destroy NXT week over week in ratings. I don't think that always has much to do with the quality of the show. I think AEW is just the newer thing, and I think that's bringing in more and more fans every week. I think eventually it will even out a little bit. But again, it could also have to do with AEW running their ads on Impact, and AEW has been much more vocal about their show. Which, by the way, haven't been able to confirm this on my show yet, but the news has been out there for a couple of weeks. Pretty soon, we're not even going to have a Wednesday Night War because NXT is moving to Tuesdays, which is then going to force Impact to move to Thursdays. So it's a domino effect. What that means for us, by the way, as wrestling fans is great news because now we have wrestling every weeknight of the week. Monday Raw, Tuesday NXT, Wednesday Dynamite, Thursday Impact, Friday SmackDown. And then sprinkled in, if you've got access to the WWE Network, you've also got 205 Live. You've also got NXT UK, which steadily delivers great matches. So what a time to be a wrestling fan. So much fucking content, so much to see, so much to watch, so many great performers. Seems like the world isn't big enough for all of them. So a lot of wrestling going on right now. That notwithstanding, we do still have the Wednesday Night War happening right this second. AEW won it again, which again, they regularly do. I feel like this show was a little bit better than NXT this week. The matches just overall were much better. Starting from the top, Kenny Omega defeats Matt Sydal. If Matt Sydal had won this match, he would have garnered a world championship opportunity. That did not happen. Back and forth, great match, high pace, as you might imagine. Go check it out if you haven't been able to see it yet. Omega did hit the V-trigger, followed by the one-winged angel for the win. They continued to build up Hangman Adam Page. He went over Cesar Bononi very, very quickly. The match did not last long at all. He hit the buckshot lariat and got the pinfall. Throughout the show, we had a promo by Lance Archer. Basically said he used to look up to Sting, and without Sting, there would be no Lance Archer. But he keeps interrupting Sting in his promos because in Lance Archer's mind, it's his time. It's not Sting's time. Sting's time has passed. So we're obviously building up to Lance Archer versus Sting as well. Tony Schiavone interviewed Britt Baker on the ramp. Britt Baker wore a t-shirt with her own bloody face on it, which is great. I haven't been able to talk about that match on this show either, but if you haven't seen it, 2 weeks ago, the unsanctioned match between Thunder Rosa and Britt Baker, one of the best women's matches on any brand I have seen on television in several years. It was violent. It was ruthless. It was bloody. I don't think that's the kind of thing you need to see every week. A lot of people get carried away with that and say, now this is the Attitude Era, and this is the kind of shiz they should be doing every week. I don't believe in that. I don't want to see this every week. But every once in a while, it's really fun to tell your 4-year-old to go to bed early so you can watch two women just beat the fucking crap out of each other. And that's what this match was. It was creative. It was inventive. It was violent. It was just fun. And even though Britt Baker lost, which she did, Thunder Rosa took the pinfall in that match from Britt Baker. Britt Baker is basically selling this as her moment. She basically is saying that Rosa should be thanking her because Baker made her relevant, which is classic heel trope. Baker says that she's the one that's putting the women's division and women's wrestling on the map. She took a shot at Mick Foley, even though Mick Foley gave her a thumbs up on Twitter. She took a shot at Mick Foley, saying it took Foley 20 years to become a hardcore legend. Well, it took her one night, which was great. Great line, great delivery. Foley, from what I hear, wasn't happy with that line. He thought it was a little bit below the belt, and apparently Baker and AEW didn't reach out to him before writing it, but I'm sure Baker didn't mean it. I'm sure Baker respects Foley just as much as we all do. Moving on, we had Christian Cage making an appearance. They're sort of hinting that Cage is going to eventually be facing Kenny Omega for the World Championship. But what happened on this night is he was backstage. He was chatting it up with the Varsity Blondes. Christian says he's just giving them some advice. Then Frankie Kazarian walks up. And as you all might remember, Christian Cage carried TNA Impact several years ago as its world champion. He and Frankie Kazarian had a little bit of a relationship on that show. And so it looks like we're going to get Christian versus Frankie Kazarian next week on Impact. So it looks like we're going to get the in-ring debut of Christian Cage on Impact next week against Frankie Kazarian of SCU. And we're going to look forward to that. We then had a trios match. This was the in-ring debut of the Pinnacle as a group. FTR and Shawn Spears represented the group. MJF, Wardlow, and Tully Blanchard were at ringside. They took on Dante Martin and the Varsity Blondes. Obviously, the Pinnacle got the win. Dax Harwood and his partner in FTR. I want to call him his WWE name, but I know that's not it, and I'm forgetting both of their names. But anyway, FTR got the pin on Griff Garrison. After it, Wardlow choke slammed Brian Pillman off the top. Tony Schiavone got in the ring to interview him. I thought this was needed because last week when the Pinnacle did their debut promo, MJF did a lot of the talking for the group. In fact, he did almost all the talking for the group. This time we were able to hear FTR talk. We were able to hear Sean Spears talk a little bit. So the Pinnacle is just getting built up as the new powerhouse on AEW. But obviously, eventually, we're going to get the Inner Circle coming back. We're going to get the Inner Circle versus the Pinnacle, maybe in a War Games match or something like that. And that's going to be really fucking good when it does happen. QT Marshall had a really compelling interview with Tony Schiavone. They're running an angle with QT Marshall where he is acknowledging Cody Rhodes as his friend, but obviously over the past few weeks on AEW television, QT has walked out on Goldust in the middle of a tag team battle royal. He didn't come out and help Cody when Cody was getting beaten down last week. Tony Schiavone just asked QT Marshall why, and QT says, hey, listen, I've been carrying Cody Rhodes' bags for the better part of 3 years, and I haven't gotten anything out of it. And QT basically said, it's my turn now. I need something from Cody. Cody came out. QT challenged Cody to a match. Cody accepted. Cody basically said that he's going to have this match, but he's not going to finish QT Marshall. He said he would not hit the Crossroads. He said he would not put him in the figure 4. So Cody is saying he wants to give QT the match, but he's not going to finish QT. He says he doesn't want to actually beat him. He just wants to give him his match, which is really interesting. This could lead to a full-fledged heel turn for QT. Maybe a moment where QT is telling Cody to finish him and Cody refuses, so QT gives him a low blow or something. We'll see. QT Marshall has improved leaps and bounds since the beginning of AEW, so I look forward to seeing how they capitalize with a bigger push on him. Then we had another trios match, the Lucha Brothers and the Laredo Kid versus the Young Bucks and Brandon Cutler. Eventually, after, again, as you might expect with every tag team and trios match in AEW, high octane, flips all over the place, hot tags and multi-man spots all over the place. Eventually, Lucha Brothers and the Laredo Kid did get the win via pinfall. Kenny Omega came out after the match. He attacked Laredo Kid, beat him down. And he basically told the Young Bucks that it was now or never. He told the Young Bucks, he threw up the fist, and he said, either too sweet me right now or we're done. And the Young Bucks said that they weren't going to do it. Omega says he chose the Bucks, but the Bucks never chose him back. Omega tells Cutler to go be their cameraman and carry their bags, and then eats a double super kick from the Lucha Brothers. The Good Brothers come out and help Omega up, who's bleeding from the lip. So basically, the Lucha Brothers beat down Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers. Kenny Omega was trying to get, the Young Bucks to too sweet him and be a part of the clique and all that stuff, and the Young Bucks just weren't going to go for it. Jade Cargill then had a brief promo saying that Red Velvet is just a pit stop on her road to success. It was then announced that Cody Rhodes and Brandy Rhodes are getting their own Ms. and Mrs. type show coming up on TNT. Let's see. Let's skip ahead to the TNT Championship match at the end of the show. This was really the match of the night. It was John Silver with the Dark Order at ringside versus Darby Allin. I've been a critic of Silver since the beginning. I think he has a strange body type. And again, I'm not judging him for how he looks. I'm just saying as a wrestler, I've never seen a wrestler with his body type. He's very short. His legs are very short, and his arms are like normal size. They're very long. But he impressed me in this match. He really, really did. This was as good of an AEW main event as I have seen recently. The Dark Order sort of hinted throughout that they were about to get involved. Eventually, Sting came out with his bat, and he prevented the Dark Order from coming out. Towards the end of the match, Allen hit the code red on Silver, got the win, retained the championship. However, after the match, Silver and Allen fist bumped, show of respect. Matt Hardy then pulled Allen out, threw him up onto the barricade. Sting and the Dark Order then fought with Hardy's crew, which consists of the Bunny, the Butcher, and the Blade, and Private Party. Ty Conti came out and attacked the Bunny. Dynamite went off the air as everybody was brawling. So it looks like we're going to get Matt Hardy versus Darby Allin for the TNT Championship. I am not really that excited for another Matt Hardy program. I think Matt Hardy is looking really stiff these days. I think that he needs to stick to managing and then just pop in the ring and throw away a twist of fate every now and then. Overall, again, I would say the AEW earned the ratings victory this week. I would give NXT like a 6, maybe 6.5 out of 10. I would give AEW Dynamite closer to an 8 out of 10. Let's go ahead and run down Raw and then SmackDown. Had a lot of announced matches for WrestleMania. Sheamus, for instance, had a comedic scene with Matt Riddle where he hit Matt Riddle over the head with a scooter. So it looks like they're going to get Sheamus versus Matt Riddle for the U.S. title at WrestleMania. Drew McIntyre was made to look strong leading into his match with Bobby Lashley. He beat both other members of the Hurt Business in a handicap match. Lashley was pissed, basically said since they couldn't get the job done, he was going to find somebody that could, and he put a hit out on the rest of the roster. And he went backstage to the locker room, and all the goobers were hanging out. You had Humberto Carrillo, Lucha House Party, Ricochet. Ricochet is a goober now. For those of you that don't know, goober is my word for the jobbers on Raw or SmackDown that chase around the 24/7 title. Drew Gulak was there as well. So there's a hit out on Drew McIntyre. Lashley wants someone to take Drew McIntyre out before WrestleMania, and he's offered up a WWE Championship opportunity to anyone who can take Drew McIntyre out before Mania. So we'll see where the story goes. What else happened on Raw? We had Asuka defeating Peyton Royce via submission. That match sucked. I mean, poor Peyton Royce. She deserves better than she's getting. But it was Peyton Royce got some offense in, but it was a glorified squash. Asuka was never going to lose that match. There was never any doubt. Immediately after the match, however, Rhea Ripley made her long-awaited debut on Monday Night Raw. Production team, looks like we have some spam in chat. I don't know if we can do anything with that, but we got some spam going on in chat. So yeah, and then after the match again, Rhea Ripley came out, challenged Asuka to a match. And it was very strange because, you know, we have heard that Charlotte is missing time because she's recovering from COVID-19. Typically, WWE doesn't acknowledge when someone has contracted COVID-19. But in this case, they did. I don't know what was different this time. But Rhea Ripley straight up said, I know Charlotte was going to challenge you for a match at WrestleMania, but Charlotte has COVID. And I was kind of taken aback by that. I was like, what? Because, you know, when someone contracts COVID-19, they typically call it an injury or something like that, or taking personal time. They don't just straight up say that someone has COVID. But in this case, they did, which was very, very strange. I'm not sure what the difference is there. Asuka did accept, told Rhea Ripley she wasn't ready for Asuka, so it looks like that is the new Raw Women's Championship match at WrestleMania. Another WrestleMania match was made official as The Miz challenged Bad Bunny for a WrestleMania match during an episode of his Miz TV show. He also announced that he and Morrison would have a diss track on Bad Bunny coming out next week. Who the hell knows? We'll see what happens with that. Then we had The Miz defeat Jeff Hardy. Again, just building up The Miz. Bad Bunny did slide into the ring and hit Miz with a guitar and then accepted that match for WrestleMania. Kofi Kingston defeated AJ Styles via pinfall. He hit him with the SOS. Before the match, New Day was trying to convince Omos that Styles was just using him and all that stuff. And then during the match, Xavier Woods provided a distraction to Omos, pulled Omos away from ringside. AJ Styles got distracted. Kofi hit the SOS and got the victory. Small thing here. I really like when matches end like this. The SOS isn't technically what most would define as a finisher because it never gets the victory. Kofi never hits the SOS and then pins somebody afterward. It's usually a kick out or it's followed by Trouble in Paradise. But Kofi actually got the pin here. And I like when matches sometimes end with moves that are not finishers because it leads you to believe that you may not always be looking for a finisher during a match. So I like that a lot. We had a tag team match. Dana Brooke and Mandy Rose lost to Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler. Reginald was ringside, providing distractions, whatever. The women's tag team division is such a fucking mess right now. I don't even want to talk about it. Braun Strowman defeated Elias. Again, we're building up to Braun Strowman versus Shane McMahon. I posted a video on TikTok last week. I am not happy with Shane McMahon being this heavily involved in WWE. I won't spend too much time on it now. If you want my thoughts on Shane McMahon, go to my TikTok page, find my video on Shane McMahon. I believe it's titled The One Thing WWE is Doing That I Can't Forgive or something. I hate that every time we get to WrestleMania season, we have to build towards a match with Shane McMahon. He's going to jump off that damn boat. at Raymond Jones Stadium. He's going to jump off that damn boat and he's going to land on Strowman. Who knows if he's going to win the match? Who cares if he wins the match? Because this story sucks. This story really sucks. Shane McMahon thinks Braun Strowman is stupid, and Braun Strowman is mad that he thinks he's stupid. And ironically, it's the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life. Shane dumped some green slime on Strowman last week. It's just pathetic. The writing for this story is just pathetic. Anyway, Shane used Elias as his monkey, basically. Braun Strowman defeated Elias for the second time in 2 weeks. Shane then hit Strowman with a crutch. He then ran out of the ring, laid out a challenge, and McMahon basically says that Strowman can pick the match type for Mania. And then finally, in the show's final segment, Randy Orton vowed to end The Fiend. Alexa Bliss came out, told Orton, be careful what you wish for. The Fiend came out. Orton acted like he was going to set The Fiend on fire. And, of course, The Fiend re-debuted at Fastlane, and his face is melted and everything is burned. He came out into the ring. Orton acted like he was going to set him on fire, but then, surprise, hit an RKO. Unfortunately, after that RKO, Alexa Bliss distracted Orton. Orton turned around right into the mandible claw. Orton went down, and the show went off the air with The Fiend and Alexa Bliss, once again, having gotten the upper hand over Randy Orton. The Fiend versus Orton is one of my favorite things currently going on in WWE. I wish they would add a stipulation, because right now they're just advertising The Fiend versus Randy Orton one-on-one at WrestleMania. I feel like there needs to be either the Firefly Funhouse stipulation or a Hell in a Cell. Definitely not another Inferno match, but a Hell in a Cell or a Hell in a Cell or a Firefly Funhouse match. Give me just 1 second. I lost my SmackDown rundown. I got to pull it back up. As I do that, I want to take a moment to make sure everyone knows that my show is not the only show on Raw Sports. We have the Fantasy Scene and we have the Dump and Chase show. So make sure that you subscribe to YouTube. Make sure you follow along with our Facebook group to keep up to date with the schedules for the Fantasy Scene and Dump and Chase. You can also go to rawsportshow.com and get merchandise from any of our active shows, including a Wrestling with My Thoughts hoodie that you can find on that website as well. So make sure you check all that stuff out. All right, got my SmackDown rundown coming back up, and I apologize. Here we go. So the big thing that was happening on SmackDown was Daniel Bryan. So at Fastlane, Daniel Bryan had Roman Reigns dead to rights in the yes lock, and Roman Reigns tapped out to Daniel Bryan. Unfortunately, the ref was down. Edge was the special enforcer. He got frustrated with Daniel Bryan, and he hit him with a chair before the referee could see Roman Reigns tapping out. Roman Reigns then retained the championship by pinning Daniel Bryan. Daniel Bryan basically said that he was willing to sit out the show until he got a championship match at WrestleMania. His ideas were either make the championship match between Edge and Roman Reigns on night one and give me a match on night two, or give me a match tonight, or make it a triple threat. Adam Pearce didn't know what to do. He told Daniel Bryan he'd have a decision for him before the end of the night. Throughout the show, Adam Pearce had conversations with Roman, Edge, and Daniel. Obviously, Roman and Edge are threatening Adam Pearce to make the right decision. Daniel Bryan is telling Adam Pearce he knows he will make the right decision. And then in the main event, it was announced that there will be a triple threat match for the Universal Championship at WrestleMania. It will be Roman Reigns versus a newly heel Edge versus the ultimate babyface Daniel Bryan. Initially, I kind of knew that this was the way they were going, but my thinking was that Daniel Bryan was only in that match to take the pin versus Edge. My thinking was they wanted Edge to be the champion. They didn't want Roman Reigns to take the pin. So let's throw Daniel Bryan in there and let's let Daniel Bryan take the pin. But my thinking is shifting a little bit. I didn't know that Edge was going to be a heel for this match when I made that prediction. Now that Roman and Edge are both playing the bad guy and Daniel Bryan is the only good guy in the match, I'm starting to think that there is a slight possibility that we could see Daniel Bryan walk out of WrestleMania as the Universal Champion. Now, I don't want to get my hopes up. I would still be okay with Edge winning the championship. I don't think Roman needs to retain. I think he's looked strong enough. I think he's held the title for long enough. He'll get other titles in the future. I think either Edge or D-Bry need to win this championship, and I'd be okay with either one. I don't want to get my hopes up, but I'm starting to think there could be an opportunity that we're heading towards Daniel Bryan winning the Universal Championship. So we'll see. What else happened on SmackDown? Seth Rollins is building toward a match with Cesaro. He had a match with Shinsuke Nakamura. Seth Rollins did hit the stomp and then continued to attack Nakamura after the match, after the win. Cesaro came out, beat the hell out of Rollins for a minute, tried to give him the swing, and Rollins scurried off. After the match later in the show, Seth Rollins was backstage being interviewed, obviously very pissed off. He said he was sick of being embarrassed by Cesaro, called Cesaro an underachieving hack, basically. And he was starting to tell the interviewer, he was in the middle of saying, Cesaro will not swing me again, only for Cesaro to come from behind, blast him, hook his heels, and then give him a spin backstage, which was excellent. Listen, good for Cesaro, by the way. Seth Rollins is a big-time WrestleMania opponent. Cesaro usually ends up in tag team matches or pre-show battle royals or whatever. Seth Rollins is a big deal. And they're letting Cesaro go one-on-one with Seth Rollins. And I think Cesaro needs to go over. I'm going to be upset. Now, I love Seth Rollins. I really do. But I think WWE are going to be missing out yet again on Cesaro if they don't let Cesaro get the pinfall here at WrestleMania. I think this is possibly a sneaky pick for match of the night or match of the 2 nights, I guess, because WrestleMania is going to be 2 nights again this year. I think Cesaro versus Seth Rollins could be the biggest match of the 2 nights. Kevin Owens also challenged Sami Zayn to a match at WrestleMania, which Sami Zayn did accept under duress. So it's going to be Kevin versus Sami at WrestleMania. Obviously, if WWE just lets those 2 guys go, that could also be match of the 2 nights. We had a 6-man tag team match. This was my match of the night. Apollo Crews, Otis, and Chad Gable versus Big E and the Street Profits. Crazy action all throughout. Otis looked really good. Chad Gable looked really good. The Street Profits looked really good. Apollo and Big E all looked really good. This was an excellent match, and I made everyone in it look great. Apollo got the win over Big E in the end after a big finisher spot fest at the end where Apollo Crews got the final shot on Big E and got the pin. It was then confirmed later on that we are getting Apollo versus Big E for the Intercontinental Championship at WrestleMania as well. Bianca Belair defeated Natalya with Sasha Banks on commentary. After the match, Sasha Banks came in, gave Bianca Belair the backstabber, continuing that feud, and it looks like Sasha Banks is going to work bad guy going into Mania. And then Rey Mysterio defeated Dolph Ziggler via pinfall, so it looks like we might be getting the Mysterios versus Ziggler and Bobby Roode at WrestleMania. They haven't announced that yet, but we'll see. By the way, Ziggler and Roode have a new theme song, and it is awesome. I love it. So there's our rundown, guys. Obviously, we'll do a WrestleMania preview as we get closer to time. My wrestler of the week is going to be The Fiend. I think The Fiend storyline is going along really well. My match of the week is going to be that 6-man tag team match that I just mentioned on SmackDown. Super, super great match. So now let's go ahead and talk about the Hall of Fame. Let's just talk about it very, very quickly because I took longer with the rundown. I spent more time on Impact than I wanted to, and I spent too much time. So let's just run down quickly who the current WWE Hall of Fame entries are going to be this year. And this is just who's been announced so far. They could add more, and as they add more, we'll talk about it more. We'll start off with one that's just kind of a slam dunk, Kane. Kane is a slam dunk pick for the Hall of Fame. I don't see how you could possibly argue Kane not being in the Hall of Fame. Multi-time world champion, multi-time tag team champion. One of the most important rivalries in history between he and The Undertaker. The moment where he debuted at WWF Bad Blood in '97 is one of the most memorable moments in wrestling history. Great in-ring performer, great character, great longevity. He has changed multiple times. Chris Jericho gets a lot of credit for making changes to stay in the wrestling business. Kane has done that as well. He's changed his look. He's changed his mask. They've given his character different story angles to work with. So Kane's just a slam dunk pick for the Hall of Fame. One of my favorite wrestlers ever. Another one that a lot of people consider a slam dunk is Molly Holly, also known as Mighty Molly. Molly Holly is one of the most influential female wrestlers in wrestling history. Again, she played two different characters and played both of them very well. She was wrestling at a time where Trish and Lita and all those folks were kind of running the show, and Molly got a little bit overlooked in her time. But I think as everyone looks back and sees what she's achieved and how good she was in the ring, I think a lot of people consider Molly Holly a slam dunk for the Hall of Fame as well. So congratulations to her. Then we have a little bit of a surprise pick as far as I'm concerned. Eric Bischoff. Eric Bischoff is being inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. And the reason I'm surprised by that is because he spent a whole lot of time on AEW recently. He spent a lot of time on AEW lately. And I am very surprised that WWE would take someone who has been on AEW so frequently and so recently and throw him in their Hall of Fame and have him be a part of the ceremony. I mean, listen, you can't deny that he's earned a spot. His place in wrestling history is cemented. Absolutely cemented with the Monday Night Wars and what he achieved with WCW. And then all of his character work over in WWE as a general manager and his rivalries with the McMahons and stuff like that. As a booker, as a producer, as a writer, not to mention all of his work over in TNA that WWE probably aren't even acknowledging in their decision-making for the Hall of Fame this year. So I'm not surprised that Eric Bischoff is going in based on his credentials, but I am incredibly surprised that he was on AEW less than 6 months ago, and WWE are choosing to put him in the Hall of Fame. So now let's talk about the one that everyone is surprised by. The Great Khali. The Great Khali has been chosen for the WWE Hall of Fame, and a lot of people are very, very, very upset, angry, put off, maybe even disgusted by the Great Khali going into the Hall of Fame. My opinion on this is I don't have a problem with it at all. And I know we had a Facebook user comment earlier. He said, Khali in the HOF Hall of Fame, terrible. I don't think it's terrible. Listen, his accomplishments, he's only a one-time world champion. He's never won any other championship. I totally get that. He's not a great wrestler. I totally get that. He barely speaks English. His promos aren't that good. Totally get that. So now you're all listening to me talk and you're saying, well, Jade, Infamous, if you can acknowledge that all these things are true, how can you possibly simultaneously be okay with the Great Khali being inducted into the Hall of Fame? And I'll tell you exactly why. Khali is an ambassador between WWE and the country of India. Khali is a hero in the country of India. Khali is one of the big reasons that WWE is a big deal in India. Wrestling-wise, he was a presence in WWE for several years. He did have a rivalry with The Undertaker. Love it or hate it, he had it. He was the first Indian-born world champion in WWE. And say what you want about his ability, but from about 2009 up until his last time that he appeared in WWE, once he became a babyface and once he was a goofy dancing love machine and he was coming down to the ring, all that stuff, he was over. Over like fucking Rover. People were cheering. People were dancing. People brought signs to support him. Khali was over. He was one of the most over baby faces. Brother, he was a lower mid-card or whatever you want to call him. He was one of the most over baby faces during that period of WWE. During a time in the PG era where things were starting to get stale in WWE, and it was very hard to get over as a babyface. Ask John Cena. Ask Randy Orton. Ask almost anybody that tried to be a babyface during that period how hard it is to get over. And the Great Khali got over as a babyface. So listen, there are worse picks for the Hall of Fame. If you can have a celebrity wing where Donald Trump and Drew McIntyre, or not Drew McIntyre, Drew Carey, I apologize. Donald Trump and Drew Carey can get into the celebrity wing when they made one appearance on WWE television, then a wrestler, like it or not, he was a professional wrestler, the Great Khali, should be able to get in based on those credentials. And that's my opinion. I am okay with the Great Khali getting into the Hall of Fame. Not my first choice, But after I thought about it for a long time, I decided I'm perfectly fine. So congratulations to the great Khali. I wonder who's going to induct him. That's an interesting conversation to have. I really have no idea who's going to induct him. Okay. Chat wasn't as active this time as it was last time. I know we had a little bit of a delay, and I apologize for that. But do we have any questions, Joey? Do we have any questions? Do we have anybody that wants to join in before we close it out for the week? Okay. Well, guys, again, if you did tune in through the whole show, I appreciate you. One more plug, make sure that you check out the other two shows that we offer on Raw Sports, the Fantasy Scene and Dump and Chase. Subscribe on YouTube, follow along on Facebook if you want to keep an eye out for those shows. Check out rawsportsshow.com for merchandise, including Wrestling with My Thoughts hoodies and other memorabilia and other apparel. Check me out every Sunday at 4 Eastern, 3 Central. Check out the video on demand on YouTube if you want to go back and watch the show again. If you do think of any questions you would like me to answer, you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can send me your requests or tweets or messages there. Again, you can go to my TikTok page, which is at Infamous Opionist, as it scrolls down below. I recently posted a video that has all of my social media handles posted on the screen, so go check me out there. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in this week to Wrestling with My Thoughts. My name is Jade, also known as the Infamous Opionist. I'll see you guys next week.